Welcome to the Group Answers podcast. I'm your host, Brian Daniel. This is the weekly show designed specifically for pastors, disciple makers, group pastors, and small group leaders. Truly, we are created to help anyone with bottom line responsibilities for discipleship. Our goal is simple: to resource, train, and encourage you in the vital work of discipleship. This is the Group Answers podcast. Let's do it. Welcome back to the Group Answer Show. I am Brian Daniel, and it is so good to be with you. We are into the next season. Appreciate everybody coming back. Last season, we spent a lot more time on the philosophical side of discipleship at a higher level and brought in just a lot of what I feel like were really interesting leaders and thinkers. This season, we're going to move back towards the practicum of discipleship and really groups. And so that brings us to today's guest, longtime friend, Rick Howerton. And Rick, if you don't mind me saying, you are a legend in this conversation. I know you don't want to, you're going to deny that and you don't want to hear that, but you are. How long? Yes, let's start there. How long have you been in groups? How long have you been in groups ministry in some form or fashion?
Almost 40 years. Almost 40 years.
There you go.
I've been in this space.
Well, I would say welcome to the show, but it's actually welcome back. For those of you that don't know, Rick and I actually started this show. It was back in the day, it was called Group Matters, and it was an hour long, and I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was really good, really. But, you know, when we heard from listeners that, hey, we love you, but an hour is just too long, we backed it down to 30 minutes. So welcome back, man. How does it feel?
It feels great. It's just great to be on here with you. I mean, you were the legend, man, doing this job, doing this broadcast for, like 14 years or something or whatever. It feels great. It's just so good to be around people who get it and to be speaking with people who want to know things. But Brian and I can look back and kind of laugh. That hour was great for us. We had a lot of fun. But I don't think anybody else was that interested in our fun.
Yeah, Rick and I met back in the Serendipity House days in the early 2000s. And just a little bit about Rick. So over 40 years, and Rick, you jump in here anytime. Rick has been a church planner. He was a state discipleship trainer for the Kentucky Baptist, and he was in a similar role for that twice. So he's logged some time in the state of Kentucky. He is a breakout and keynote speaker. He is a former national specialist for the Southern Baptist Convention or Lifeway Christian Resources. He is an author. He is a groups pastor. How long were you with Nav Press? And that was a similar training job, right? So that was a heavy-duty discipleship conversation there.
It was wonderful. I was with them 3 years and had the opportunity. It's been real fun for me. I've had the opportunity to be in three spaces in the discipleship/groups world, and that is the on-campus groups world, what we call adult Sunday school, the off-campus, what we call small groups. But then my 3 years with Nav Press was super enlightening as we got into what discipleship really is and what that means and how it's done. Yeah.
And most recently, he was the central groups pastor at Lake Point Church in Rockwall, Texas. And that church is no small matter. It's multi-site down there in the great state of Texas. And now he's a coaching consultant type and working on a lot of writing projects. So again, welcome back. And thank you for just taking time out of your day and being willing to share your wealth of experience and wisdom with our listeners. So Rick, let's just start here. You've spent decades in groups ministry. We've already talked about that. But we bring ourselves to 2025. And you and I have spent not a little time talking about just the trajectory of groups ministry. And I think we would trace that back to Lyman Coleman, probably, at least groups as we know it, in the maybe even late 60s, but certainly the 70s and 80s when serendipity was really growing, through the church growth movement in the 90s. And so, obviously now we're in a different era. So in your perspective, what is the greatest need of group pastors today?
Interestingly, Brian, I think it's the same as it was when I started doing group ministry. And that is clear systems and tools in order to do the ministry well, and credentialing. You may find these to be pretty surprising, but from the time I got in group ministry, there is no really good way to get training on how to be a great groups pastor. That is hands-on. How do I do my budget? How do we make sure that we're accomplishing group ministry the way our church wants it accomplished? How do I put together teams? How do I lead leaders and train leaders? There just were no systems. It's kind of a piecemeal together how you do this job. And then when I started, and there's still very, very few things you can find, where do I find the tools that I need in order to know how to do this? So in my consulting, I'm often asked the question like, can you share with me a good job description for a person who's the prayer lead in our group? And it's hard to come by those things. So those tools, and then not only that, the credentials. I've been asked hundreds of times to help churches find group pastors. There's no credentialing out there. So also it'd be wonderful to have a certification, which is something I've been working on for group pastors. So when a church calls and asks, do you know someone who has the tools and the training and the understanding to be a great group pastor for our church? I could say, yes, I know someone who was credentialed.
So one of the things you're doing in this season of ministry is you're doing a lot of writing. And most recently, you have written a book called Building a Perpetually Growing Groups Ministry. So in that book, you mentioned 4 essential catalysts for leading this kind of ministry or
Mhm.
perpetually growing groups ministry.
Yeah.
What are those catalysts?
Yeah, so that's not actually the title. We're still working on a title, but you got to the heart of where we're headed with the book for sure.
Hey, that's what I
Uh,
saw on Facebook.
okay, I got you. Yeah, so you did well. So what I say, there are 4 things. First of all, it's leadership. No one can lead a movement unless they have leadership gifts or they're willing to learn leadership. So once you get that established and someone is working toward being a great leader, or they are becoming a great leader, or they are a great leader, then what are the 3 things they must do to have a perpetually growing group ministry? Expand the infrastructure, launch new groups, and strengthen existing groups. What I have seen in, working with hundreds of churches and then being a group pastor myself, if those 3 things are in play constantly and you're never fudging on them, but you're working toward those 3 things, you'll have a perpetually growing group ministry.
Say those again.
Expand the infrastructure, launch new groups, and strengthen existing groups.
All right. You emphasize expanding infrastructure early on. What do you mean by that? What is infrastructure foundationally before launching new groups?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I'll simplify this. What we normally call this is a coaching system.
Ah,
And that simply means we have persons who are coaches who normally connect with 10 to 12 group pastors. And so their responsibility is to encourage them and coach them along and give them guidance and answer their questions. And you can see where I'm coming from, inspire them. But they are the primary connecting rod to 10 or so group leaders, the coach is. Now, in a larger setting, like the setting I was in, we had captains that connected with coaches. And normally there's 10 to 12
10 to
coaches
12, 10 to 12
10 to 10
captains.
to 12 coaches that one captain would be responsible for. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing an org chart basically with a group pastor at the top of the org chart in a mega church. Then there's captains under that group pastor. And then below each captain are leaders. And then I include in my infrastructure apprentices, because I think without apprentices, we don't accomplish the primary goal of growing groups. Did I say that understandably,
Yeah.
Brian, for the
Yeah.
audience? Yeah. One thing that I suggest that most don't is that you have coaches before you need them. And that being because those coaches can also be folks that can recruit leaders, but also when a leader is put in place, when you do their training, it would be very important for that coach to be in the room with them so they're building a relationship even early on.
So if I'm a listener out there, I'm thinking coaches, captains, apprentices, that's all great for Lake Point, you know, which is just this, it's a, you got a lot of resources there. You have also served in smaller context. How do you move up and down that hierarchy between a church of thousands and a church maybe of less than 100 or 200 in this respect?
Yeah, great question, Brian. So the deal is this: you want to keep in mind span of care is the foundational principle here. Each person having someone above them in the org chart, if I could use the term org chart, who is connecting with them, as I mentioned, to meet needs, inspire, to answer questions, etc. So if I'm in a smaller setting, if I'm in a smaller church and I've got 10 groups, the group pastor will function as the coach for those 10 group leaders. Once I get to a point I'm looking at having 20 groups, then I would like to have a couple of coaches. and I will train and raise up those coaches and prepare them to coach their group leaders. So you're just constantly expanding. And at the point you get to 10 groups, again, you're looking at one coach at that point. If you get to a large situation, you need a coach, you need a captain for 10 coaches, then suddenly the game changes and you're adding captains to the org chart.
Talk about a little bit about the profile of each of those levels of leadership, like captain, coach, and group leader. What are you looking for in those roles?
Yeah, I think the thing I'd say more than anything else, Brian, is we want to be careful not to take great group leaders and make them coaches. We often do this, but their heart is to shepherd a group of people. That's their heart. So you want to keep those people in the leadership role, working with a specific group of people, group leaders. Coaches and captains are leaders of leaders. In fact, oftentimes you can take someone who has never led a group. People push back on this, and I understand will be difference of opinion on this. You could take someone who's never led a group, and they can actually make a great coach or a great captain because they have the ability to lead leaders. I think I don't have time to get into all the criterion for those roles, but I think that's the primary thing to remember is you want people who carry themselves in such a fashion, who connect with leaders in such a way they feel like they're speaking with equals who have, but one has a supervisory responsibility. Leaders of leaders are different types. In our setting at Lake Point, what we found was oftentimes we would find people who led or owned businesses, and they were outstanding captains or coaches because they're already leading leaders and they understand that with just a little guidance to remind them that you're not here to manage them. Managers make sure a job gets done. Coaches make sure people are growing. They can be great coaches or captains.
That reminds me, I was reading an organizational development book years ago, and I remember the author saying that you promote based on potential and you give raises based on performance. There's a little bit of that. That you don't want to pull out someone that is leading a group well for one of these roles necessarily. I mean, it may be, but it's not a professional pipeline. You're
Yeah,
looking at ministry and gifting and gift sets.
yeah, and Brian, I would suggest that the most important role in the org chart is not the group pastor, the captain, or the coach. It's the leader. Because the responsibility of the group ministry is to make disciples. Well, who's doing that at the highest level? It's the group leader. So if you're going to prioritize a role and make sure you have a person who is effective in any given role, make it the leader. Don't make a great leader a coach. They may flourish as a coach too, but let's keep our leaders in place that are doing a great job discipling.
I think it's interesting that you build the infrastructure in a posture of expectancy. That you build the infrastructure prior to the growth of the group's ministry itself, and I think that's. I don't know that that would surprise a lot of people out there necessarily, but I think it. I think it's a good. I think it's just a good reminder that you build that infrastructure with a posture of expectancy. All
Yes.
right.
Yes.
All right. So, okay, expanding infrastructure. So a second catalyst is starting new groups. So there is not a person out there that is not for new groups.
Right.
But what we are seeing in our research and other data is that that's just not happening a whole lot.
Right.
So, um, uh, given your experience, let's just talk about that process, and let's just begin with what's the right time to start. Is there a right time to start groups and a wrong time to start groups?
Yeah, there have been, yeah, there have been some cliches that are out there, and they're good cliches. They are right cliches. They're not just thoughts; they're truthful. The best time to start groups is what many call the afters, after the first of the year, after school starts, after Easter, after a major event. If you can set things up so that you can do that. Now, this is a different kind of situation here in some way after a major event, you're oftentimes trying to start affinity groups. So if we have a men's conference, it's a great time to start men's groups. If we have a women's conference, it's a great time to start women's groups. So the afters are very important, but the other time to start groups, and this is where most of us lose it, we talk apprentices, we even have apprentices, but we don't keep in check. We don't hold them accountable to start a group. Once an apprentice has been in place 12 to 18 months, it's time for them to go launch a new group. That's the best time to start a new group.
The challenges, well, one of the challenges is what you just identified is it's the leader. So, and I think also building it out. I mean, I love the idea of the afters, particularly the event. I think a lot of that would be like campaigns. Like, I've
Yeah.
talked a lot about that, and I think they're probably still just as effective now as they've ever been. But in
Yes.
terms of just the methods of starting new groups, and finding and recruiting those group leaders, or I guess in the pipeline that you just described, it would be apprentices. You may go, or are there two channels? Like, do some people go straight from group to group leader, and then some people you are looking at in as an apprenticeship in the time period that you just referenced? But identifying, finding, and recruiting group leaders. What's your favorite method, and what makes it effective?
Yeah. So I'm going to suggest one-on-one is the best method.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, well, it's just so much more personal. Group ministry is a relational ministry more than anything else. Now, those of us who have led group ministries, we know you have to have systems in place. You have to run those systems. But bottom line is it's relational. So the one-on-one is the most important. But in the book that you've talked about, that we don't have a good title for yet, uh, in the book you talked about, I lay out 7 systems for finding group leaders and 9 systems for recruiting group leaders.
Finding and
And
recruiting,
finding it,
two different. Okay.
they are. If you in group being a group pastor, just being a staff member, you realize I have to find them before I can recruit them, and my system for finding them may be quite different than recruitment. So, for instance, one way I mentioned in the book is, well, let me think about it. Hosting a mid-sized gathering in my office. I'm going to sit with those people. I'm going to express to them, I've called them here for this reason. I think you have what it takes. Here's what the expectations are. Would you pray about and consider this? So that one setting would be 6 or 8 people. We can have very personal conversation. One-on-one, same kind of situation, same kind of system as far as the things I'm trying to point out. You have what it takes, etc. But um, I'm going to talk to them very personally, and we're going to pray together individually, let them pray. And then there's the larger setting where you call together a lot of people, and you have basically a presentation, and then you give them a card that they can fill out that says, I'm either interested, this is not the right time for me, or I need more information. Then you can make contact with them. But like I say in the book, I point out 9 different ways to recruit them and 7 different ways to find them.
All right, so you just went over just 3 of those. Where could I find is it down is the book downloadable right now?
The book is not available yet.
Oh,
And when we
yeah.
get to talking, and we're going to talk in a few minutes about a cohort, you'll understand why, as will the listener. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about building out the infrastructure. We've talked about starting new groups, which everyone out there should be interested in. Um, there is a science to it, but there's also an art to it. So it's the proverbial art and science. So another catalyst is strengthening existing groups. So really interested in hearing your thoughts on this. So you and I both know that many pastors struggle to keep their existing groups healthy, and there's lots of reasons for that. And I think you and I would agree there's a natural lifespan of groups that has to be taken into account here too.
Right.
But what's one high leverage practice to improve group strength across the board?
So I'm going to shock everybody, and I'm going to make some people angry, I think, if I can go down that path.
And we'll bleep out whatever makes people angry. So go ahead.
That'd be great. Well, I'm only going to say one thing at this point. I can go further if you'd like me to, but multiplying groups. So here's the deal. You mentioned, there's a time span. A group will stay vibrant. Some say 2 years. I say 18 months is the best marker. They may stay communal, but they won't stay vibrant if they're together over 2 years. Vibrancy in the church world is when I still have a passion to be on mission. When I lose a passion to be on mission, there's something that exits the room every time we meet. We become a nice little close knit family, but we no longer carry out the greatest calling, and that is to further the kingdom. So it's very important to multiply groups. Now, I would like to say this. For years, we talked about multiplying groups and birthing groups and all those different terms.
Yeah.
And I experimented with all those terms for years and had no success. And what people would say to me is, well, you guys want us to do this so that the institution grows. They'd say the church, but institutionalization was a thing at the time. I started using the term, let's plant another mission, start another mission. And that really resonated with our group leaders. So starting a new mission sounds very kingdom oriented. Multiplying a group sounds very institutional oriented. You want me to start a new group so that you can grow your ministry. Starting a new mission is quite different. But yes, when we talk about group health, I see in my work with churches and being a group pastor, I've seen, I can probably honestly, Brian, say thousands of group leaders that I've trained through the years who come to me and they say, how can I kind of revitalize my group? And as we, talk about it, or we're in a group setting, even if we're discussing it, the ultimate outcome is you've turned inward. And once you've turned to navel gazing, you will never have the vibrancy in the group that you long for. Now, I don't want to mislead anybody. Everybody that's listening is going to say, oh, no, we have the closest relationships with any people we've ever had in our lives. They're always there for us when there's a death in the family. They bring meals when somebody's sick. There's a difference between being a community that cares and a community that changes the world. And it's easy to see, even in the terminology, which one brings the most vibrancy.
So, Rick, do you have markers or like a guide for how to launch a new mission or plant a new mission? I forget how you set that up. I mean, because that's compelling, but I think I would want. So, what do you mean by that? A little bit of a guidance on that. How do you when you articulate that to someone? How do you set that up, or how do you play that
Yeah.
out?
I'll do it as quickly as I can. There are four necessities that over the years I've come to conclude have to be in place: a leader, a location, a launch team, and a launch date. A leader, a location, a launch team, and a launch date. Now, the launch team is one where this is not discussed much. This is something that I came to a conclusion about and then wrote some stuff on it so our groups could do it. Normally, when we have people who are hesitant to lead a group, they'll say, I don't think I can get anybody to come. I don't think I can get a group of people to join me. The reason they think that is because they're thinking only of the relationships they have. If it's a couple and they just had one other couple, or if it's a couple of single people and they want to, start a group and they can get 3 or 4 singles to join them, what they want to do is get that launch team together. And I have a very systematic approach in the book on step-by-step process on how to get that team together and have a meeting, and you start brainstorming the names of people that you know. And by the time that meeting ends, normally they're sitting there with 30 or more names that they can contact to consider being part of the group. Also, what happens is the new leader can then assign the person to invite those folks that are on that list. They can ask the person who gave that name, who already knows them, to invite them to the group. It's almost always a success. That problem is alleviated. So if you got the leader, you've got a launch team, and they can conclude. They can decide who they're going to invite and gather a group of people. You have a location, so they know when they're going to meet and where they're going to meet. It's not really that hard to start a new group.
There's a lot of overlap here, in this conversation, but one of the things I'd like just a little more clarity on, you've referenced coaching a few times. The difference between, and that's a really good word, and it's a word that's been out there for a while, the difference between coaching and managing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the ways that we can avoid burnout, which is a huge factor in this dynamic.
Yes. So I said it a moment ago. Let me see if I can expound on it a little bit. The difference between coaching and managing is a coach is growing the person they're coaching. A manager is making certain the person they're responsible for is getting the job done. So in many settings, coaches feel as though if my leaders are getting their job done and they have the tools they need, and I'm making sure they know how to fill out the attendance records. They know where to get your curriculum. They know, you see where I'm headed here.
Yeah.
They're good to go. A coach is saying, I'm going to make sure they have all of that, but I'm going to make sure that they are encouraged when they're struggling, that they are inspired when they're losing passion, that they have someone to answer their questions. and even challenging them a little bit, maybe even giving them a list of books to read that the group pastor has given me, or a podcast they might listen to for group leaders. I'm helping to grow that person in their leadership rather than just making sure they're getting their job done. When someone knows that someone cares enough to give them some level of mentorship, man, they're going to be in the game a long time.
Thanks for that additional clarity. All right, I want to make the turn here and talk about the cohort that you referenced earlier, the group pastor masterclass cohort.
Yeah.
So tell me what this is and what sets it apart from other things that are out there.
Let me first kind of tell you how I got there. If
Okay.
I hope I have
Yeah.
time for this. When I was in seminary, I was a church music major in seminary, and I kept going to classes thinking I can't do this job. I can't do this job. And I took a 3 week summer class, and the guy walked in carrying a binder, like 4 inch thick binder for all of us. There was no digital back then. A 4 inch binder, and gave each one of us a binder. And the individual started the class, first class, by saying, by the time you leave this 3 week course, you're going to be able to do your job effectively. And I'm thinking, then why am I here for 3 years? So what went through my mind. What he did was he brought us in the binder, he brought all the tools we needed. So it was things he had done in the past. It was emails written for invitations. It would have been letters back then. It was a model leadership retreat. It was step by step processes and procedures to accomplish work. And he basically made that our class. I did walk out of the room going, I can do this job now after 3 weeks. I realize, as I mentioned early on, that I think one of the primary needs of group pastors today is clear systems to accomplish the work that they're responsible for and called to. So, this cohort is about unveiling these practical necessities and how to do them, along with a toolkit to accomplish it. So I've taken all this work I've done over these decades and I've created a toolkit, and I don't have time to get into it, but here's what I can tell you. When I look at this toolkit, it's literally hundreds and hundreds of pages of information. I asked myself the question through my decades of group ministry, what is it I needed instant access to in order to either create my own something or to do this job well? And the toolkit was created. So every person involved in the cohort gets a toolkit. By the way, I'm sorry, you asked what the cohort is. The cohort is something I'll do. It's a year-long cohort with a select number of people, 12 in each group, kind of following Jesus' example of 12. And we will be together for that full year. I think you asked kind of what sets it apart. One thing is, it's more than me being with them once each cohort session. It's a mentoring relationship. My goal now at my age is to make other people the hero of the story. So I want them to have consultation anytime they want or need it. So if you were to hire somebody to do a consultation with you, it'd cost you $200 an hour. If you're part of this cohort, you can call me anytime, day or night, and we'll talk about whatever you want to discuss. So it's these sessions, but also part of the cohort is the book. So unlike most cohorts, and there's many great cohorts. I'm not questioning any of their validity or their or how great they are. You'll also receive the book that goes along with the cohort. So you'll be with about 12 people and myself, and it'll be a year-long cohort that someone can get involved in and grow their ministry.
So you want to talk about when it starts and how
Yeah,
someone might reach out to you if they wanted to be a part of this, and
yeah,
maybe a little bit about the what it costs.
yeah. That's a great. Yeah, those are the bottom lines that everybody has to know. Yeah. So as far as cost goes, my goal was to make it about or less than what someone would receive in their budget to attend a conference. So the cost is $2,000. May sound like a lot, but when you take into consideration what you're receiving and the mentoring you'll get and the coaching you'll have anytime you want it, that's really, really good actually compared to others. I did look at others to see what would be comparable. So about $2,000. I can defer payment until the next budget year. A few people that are signing up right now, we are registering right now. A few people that are signing up saying, "Well, I've already spent my budget for this year." Hey, I don't care if we get paid in January. If you want to break up the payments, we could do that. But we are going to start on May the 28th. is the first cohort gathering. I'm doing 3 cohorts. Unless we have so many people, we'll do more. So there'll be, May 28th, but on May 29th, there will be another cohort. One of my great joys has been through the decades is to take a handful of female church leaders and to mentor them. And I have found that to be very, very helpful to them and to me. And in order to contact me about that, you can email me at Rick, RICK, dot PGCC, PGCC at gmail.com. That's Rick dot perpetually growing church consulting at gmail.com.
And that's right around the corner, Rick. So, I mean, we are at the time of this recording, that is about 6 weeks away. So this is going to drop. So if there's you that are listening, we may be after that. Don't hesitate to reach out to him, because he is saying that there are 3 planned, but he would plan more depending on the reaction and the traction.
Brian, definitely. This is some of my peers in ministry right now are my age in the group space, and we're almost all saying the same thing. God blessed us with others who helped us. Our goal now and our biblical responsibility is to take what we've learned and to pass it on to others. So yes, I will start more cohorts if people want to be involved.
And I would recommend reaching out to Rick anyway, and just establishing that contact. Well, Rick, thanks for being with us. It sounds like you have a lot going on. I'm excited for you. That is outstanding, and that is such a good fit. And it's just so good to see your face and to hear your
You
voice
too,
again.
man.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Group Answers podcast. Again, I am Brian Daniel for Rick Howerton. A special thanks goes out to executive producer Angie Elkins and producer Nikki Ogden. We could not do this without them and the larger Lifeway family. That's going to do it for this episode. Look forward to being with you again on down the road. Group Answers is a production of the Lifeway Podcast Network. Executive producer Angie Elkins, edited by Colin Cruz, and engineered by Donnie Gordon. Produced by Nikki Ogden. And I'm your host, Brian Daniel. Group Answers is recorded at the Lifeway Podcast Studios in Brentwood, Tennessee, and in my personal studio in Evergreen, Colorado, with the help of Riverside.fm. On behalf of the Group Answers team, thank you for listening. I'll meet you right back here next week with another episode of Group Answers.